Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy42, joined by Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL on Twitter. And we're talking about tonight's action here on FanDuel. We got a nice slate of games, but not a whole lot to feel comfortable with. I mean, as you know, you only get one pitcher on FanDuel, and usually you see your top guy, you lock in your top guy, or you see another guy you love, and you get him for your GPPs. But a lot of uncertainty here tonight. Nobody that's a monster favorite. Nobody that just seems to be the slam dunk lock that we get every once in a while. So it's going to be an interesting night.
Yeah, there's a lot of middling options, some in the middle upper tier. But I think this is a night, if you run out multiple cash game lineups, maybe diversify a little bit of pitching, because no one just jumps off the screen at me at first glance.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And just to go ahead and touch on a couple of these options that you and I were talking about here. You've got Chris Sale, but he's going against Detroit. Hasn't looked great. He had a fine game against them a few weeks ago, but certainly not a cash game play for me. Scott Kazmir, too expensive. You had mentioned that there's some rain concerns there as well. Not paying $9,400 for him. For me, my favorite play as far as upside and guy that I feel pretty good about is Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole is a guy who he's only allowed one home run this year, 63.2% ground ball rate, 28.9% K rate. We know the Reds have some power, but they're not a very consistent offense, and this is a pitcher's park in Pittsburgh, so I really like Garrett Cole here, where coincidentally his worst game of the season has been against the Reds, but since that day he's been absolutely dominant. Guy's got great stuff, and I think he's got a huge ceiling too.
Yeah, I agree. He's my number one option, even though it's relatively close. Correct me if I'm wrong, that game against the Reds earlier was in Cincinnati, right?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Yeah, so I mean, you have the park shift to Pittsburgh. I mean, he pitches better at home anyway with that elite ground ball rate. I really like him. I think if you have to spend up on one pitcher, Cole is your guy that you can take the most comfort in.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And a couple other options we've got here. Lance Lynn's a guy that I know you and I both like. He's showing the strikeout upside he didn't really show earlier in his career recently. His worst game was against a bad offense too in Milwaukee, strangely enough, but he's been very good so far this season. Double-digit points in actually 12 or more FanDuel points in each game except for the Milwaukee game. Now going up against the Cubs team that we know they have significant upside, but they also swing and miss a lot. So, I mean, if Lance Lynn is able to keep the ball in the park, which is what concerns me a little bit because his ground ball rate is pretty pedestrian there at 37.8%. But if he can rack up some strikeouts, give you a quality start, I think he's not in a bad spot at 8,300.
Yeah, and his susceptibilities against lefties, so you're kind of worried about Rizzo there. But, I mean, if he can work around him, I think he has a great chance to mow down this lineup. You look at earlier in the year, April 8th, he went against the Cubs in Wrigley. He went 6 innings, 9 Ks. Didn't get the win, but that was because of lack of run support. So, I mean, I don't really mind him here if you're looking away from Cole. Lance Lynn's probably your number 2 option.
Yeah, and he's not a sexy name, so he's not one of those guys that people, the casual fans just going to click Lance Lynn and just get him in there. Those type of guys are going to be looking at Chris Sale and company. So, to mention another guy, Jacob deGrom has really struggled against lefties this year. 418 WOBA allowed, 3 homers already. Hasn't really looked like himself, but we know this guy's got incredible stuff. We saw it last year. We've seen it at times this year. And this is a Baltimore lineup that is pretty inconsistent at times, and they're definitely beatable. And I think he makes for a good tournament play. I don't know that I quite trust him in cash games right now. I mean, he hasn't pitched more than 5 1/3 innings his last 2 starts. But, I mean, like you mentioned, we were talking before the show, I mean, he's a guy that has that big upside. I just feel like he's more of a tournament play.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, yeah, he does have strikeout upside. And actually, like we were saying before the show, Baltimore actually has the lowest run total of the night at 3.14 projected runs. So take that into consideration. Pitcher-friendly environment in New York. And a lot of people will be off of him because looking at the game logs, he's been pretty unimpressive as of late. So I think this is a fine spot for a bounce-back performance if you want to take your chances.
Yeah, I completely agree with that there. And I'm going to mention one more guy, and I think there's a cheap guy that you might be looking at here as well. The guy that I'm looking at for tournaments here is Danny Duffy. Cleveland doesn't hit left-handers very well at all. They've got a lot of lefties in their lineup, as we know. Danny Duffy had a great game last time out against Detroit. 7 Ks. I believe it was 2 earned runs over 7 innings. Got the win. And obviously, that's a much tougher lineup than the Indians are here. So a lot of things going in his favor. He's not a big strikeout guy, so expecting 7 Ks is, pretty optimistic of you. But if I wouldn't be surprised if he gives you a quality start, goes 6 or 7 innings, maybe gives up a couple runs, and you don't love $7,600 price tag, but at the same time, that's pretty much the lower rung of pitchers today. So I don't mind him as a tournament option.
Yeah, I don't mind that call either. One more guy I'm going to throw at you for tournaments is Ubaldo Jimenez of Baltimore. Like we said, New York, that's a pitcher-friendly environment there. The Mets are, pretty mediocre hitting team. And Jimenez, he's had a nice strikeout rate this season so far. He got 6 Ks in 7 innings, 6 Ks in 5 innings, 8 Ks in 7 innings. So, I mean, he has that upside if he can get the win here, which would be a little more difficult of a proposition. But, I mean, if DeGrom struggles again, I don't know, maybe he could come out on top with a victory and have some strikeouts to go along with it.
Yeah, and we've seen it from him before. I mean, the guy has great stuff. It's just his command that's the issue. I mean, he was walking almost 14% of batters last year. This year he's got it under 10%, so making strides the right way. Like you said, he's got a great strikeout rate, and his ground ball rate so far this year is 67%. So, I mean, if he can maintain that, I mean, you're looking here. I mean, his one bad start this year, he didn't even give up a hit. He walked 3 batters and just got in too much trouble in 3 2/3 innings. So, I mean, this is a guy who quietly is pitching very, very well this year, so I don't mind him at all.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on here to catcher, where I talk about him every day, and I'm never going to stop. Stephen Vogt. He's now the most expensive catcher, and he should be, in my mind, at $4,000 today. Going up against Samuel Deduno, or I'm sorry, not Samuel Deduno, Kyle Gibson here. And we know we like to target him against righties. He was a disappointment if you expected another home run last night, but, I mean, the guy's just mashing the ball, batting over 350 on the season. And that Oakland lineup's been scoring some runs and getting guys on base. Billy Burns now at the top of that lineup getting on base. So I really like Stephen Vogt once again.
Can we just appreciate the type of baseball player Stephen Vogt is for a second here? I mean, he looks like that, old man softball league. I'm going to drink 5 beers in the dugout, then go out and hit 3 home runs type of guy.
Tough.
Yeah, I just love him. Anyway, I think he's a little overpriced for me personally today. I know pitching's a little bit cheaper, but I'm probably going to look down at 3.5K. You have Russell Martin, righty-lefty matchup against CC Sabathia in the Rogers Center. I really love that spot, and Martin's been crushing the ball as of late. You got multiple hits in his last 3 starts. And he even went 1 for 1 in a spot start with an RBI and a stolen base. So he's hitting the ball really well. It's a great righty-lefty matchup in a hitter-friendly park. I love Russell Martin for a majority of my cash games.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, and just to further that fact, I mean, his 2 hits last night were both doubles, too. So he's hitting the ball hard. So I like that call a lot. And if you want to go cheaper, AJ Przinsky continues to hit cleanup. I don't know how all of a sudden he's a better hitter than he ever was in his career, but at 2,600 against Jerome Williams, I don't mind him at all at 2,600 if you need to save some money.
Yeah, another guy I'm looking down in that range kind of is Yasmani Grandal. Has the platoon in Milwaukee, hitter-friendly park, 2.7K. Don't mind that price tag. Otherwise, for tournaments, looking at Jason Castro of Houston, if he's in the lineup. Colby Lewis is one of the more favorable pitchers to target today in terms of raw splits. I know he's been decent as of late, but, I mean, you just have to expect regression at some point in time. And he has a 370 WOBA split against left-handed bats, 45% fly ball rate in a hitter-friendly environment. So maybe look to Castro if he's in the lineup, try and catch some power upside.
Yeah, I like that. And Colby Lewis pitching well above his means right now, like you mentioned. This is the guy who has been getting rocked by lefties and righties throughout his career. And, I mean, he's in the tail end of his career, so it's not like he's all of a sudden having a resurgence where he's just getting good. I mean,
he's hitting his prime.
Yeah, he's hitting his prime right at the end of his career. So I'm not buying into that. You can avoid Colby Lewis if you like. I'm not doing that. I'm still targeting him every day. You already mentioned Anthony Rizzo at first base. Great tournament play there against Lance Lynn. 4,300 there. Got to like him. Looking at Adrian Gonzalez, of course, at $4,200 against Willie Peralta, who has been bad against lefties. He's been bad against righties. And a guy that I like here for tournaments quite a bit is Mark Teixeira against Mark Burley. Burley is the ultimate contact pitcher now. He's not striking anyone out. He's really not walking that many guys either. And Teixeira's not hitting for average, but he's got 10 dongs already on the year. The guy's hitting the ball really hard. Obviously, switch hitter, so he's not a guy that is going to get platooned out if there's a righty that comes in. So $3,600, I like him in tournaments a lot.
Yeah, I was very pleased with Teixeira last night. Had him in the GPP article, written him up for some home run upside, and he came through. I think this is another great spot for him in the Rogers Center. Otherwise, I'm looking at same game, Edwin Encarnacion against Sabathia. Another righty-lefty matchup, even though Encarnacion actually has better splits against righties over the past 3 years, but still, Sabathia very generous to right-handed bats. You have to like that. I like him more for tournaments with a little bit inflated price tag. Otherwise, for cash games, I'm looking down to David Ortiz. Really like him in this spot, and as we were saying before the show, Boston's the second highest projected scoring team today. So he's going up against Cologne at home. I like it. Fair price point, 3.2K. Otherwise, Freddie Freeman at 3.4K against Jerome Williams. You have to like that matchup. Decent price point for a cash game play. And he came through for a lot of people last night with a home run, 3 runs scored, 2 RBIs, like 12 total fantasy points. He really helped me out in cash games in that regard. So I'm going back to the well again tonight, I think.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. And one other guy hits righties really well. Going up against, looks like Weiland for the Dodgers is Adam Lind at 3,100. We know he hits righties well. That lineup itself isn't doing a whole lot, but I don't mind him either if you want to go down that cheap.
Yep.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for first base. Let's move on to second base, where Jose Altuve was kind of a bust for me last night, but I'll give him a pass. You can't be the best hitter in the game at second base every single night. But yeah, obviously facing a righty today. Granted, a bad righty. $1,400 more than any other second baseman. So tournament only option, probably only a single tournament only option for me at that price. I like Devin Travis at $3,600 against Sabathia. You already mentioned his splits against righties. Jason Kipnis, a lefty-lefty matchup. No thanks for me. And if you're looking at tournament-wise, your buddy here, Brian Dozier, against the lefty. Yes, it's a well above average lefty, but the guy's on fire right now, and we know that throughout his career he mashes lefties. So I'm a big fan of Brian Dozier here too.
Yeah, I'm actually starting a petition to change his nickname officially to the Minnesota Laser Show. So if you guys could help me gain traction on that, I'd appreciate it.
Done. Post that on Twitter. I'll sign it.
All right. Yeah, I really like him in this spot as well. Otherwise, looking down, Travis, actually a little more expensive. I also had him on my list. My kind of default option has a nice price tag. At second base has been Dustin Pedroia. Don't mind him tonight, batting second. As we said, Boston's one of the higher scoring teams projected tonight, so I don't mind him as a fallback option for cash games. Otherwise, Neil Walker, I think, is a sneaky tournament option. The Pirates in general have been pretty bad lately. They're on a pretty prolonged cold streak, so I think a lot of people will be off of Walker, but this is a very fair price point for a cleanup hitter, switch hitter. That I mean, his talent level's well above the 2.7K price tag. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you there. And one other guy I'm going to throw in usually hits. He's either hit first or sixth most times against the lefty. Is Ricky Weeks at $2,500 tonight against C.J. Wilson. I'm not targeting Wilson a ton, but I'm also not a big fan of C.J. Wilson. So if Ricky Weeks bats leadoff, I think he makes for a fine punt at $2,500.
Yeah, good call.
All right, moving on to third base here, where unfortunately Matt Carpenter's a lefty-lefty matchup. I did look into his numbers, and he's been pretty damn good against lefties, too. So I think at that price, he's not going to be a cash game option for me against John Lester, despite the fact that he's struggling. But 4,100, he's still got that upside, and I mean, he's just getting it done. Hit another home run last night, 4 RBIs. The guy's incredible, so I don't mind him. Josh Donaldson, somehow not the most expensive third baseman here against I'll be nice and say average lefty in CC Sabathia. We know his video game numbers against lefties. Josh Donaldson's got to be your top option at third base.
Yep. I mean, I'm in complete agreement. I think most of the daily fantasy world will be in complete agreement tonight. I'm probably not going to fade him for cash games. I mean, he's easily to blend in at that price point. But, I mean, there's merit in steering away from him in tournaments because he is going to be highly owned. Otherwise, looking down, I kind of like Alex Rodriguez, righty-lefty matchup, hitter-friendly park against Mark Burley. Otherwise, a guy that I think is going to be sneakier than he should be, he profiles really well tonight, is Luis Valbuena. 2.9K. He's batting second or third in that Houston lineup, and as we said, Colby Lewis against lefties, not great over the past 3 years, over his career really. So I really like Luis Valbuena tonight. If I'm not going Donaldson, I'll probably go with him.
Yeah, I like that at all. I like that a lot, I should say. And one other guy I'm going to throw in there, he hasn't been hitting particularly well, but if Carlos Carrasco doesn't have it going, Mike Moustakas batting second for that potent offense.
Yep.
I like him a lot at 2.8, and we know the Royals always really underowned, so I don't mind throwing him in there in some tournaments.
One more guy around the same price range, Chase Headley at 2.7K. I think he might jump up in the lineup going against a lefty, so keep on the lookout for that and maybe consider him for a tournament.
Yeah, I think he's been batting right around fifth against lefties, so I like that call too. I mean, nice and cheap. All right, moving on to shortstop, where gross. I mean, it's pretty bad.
Every night.
Yeah. I mean, we need to start breeding some shortstops. I mean, I know I've got a young son here. Maybe I'll teach him to be a shortstop because Major League Baseball is at a big-time shortage of good shortstops. So we need to get to work on making some new shortstops.
How many years do we have to wait for that?
I mean, till he's pro, give me about 15.
We can't wait that long, man.
Hey, I mean, he's 4. You want to give him a contract now? That's fine. I'll sign.
All right,
Go right ahead.
I'll punt the position until he's up there. All right,
that's fair. That's fair. Marcus Semien at 2,900 is probably going to be the guy that I go with more often than not. They're batting second in that order. I mean, he's still getting on base every day. He's scoring runs. I mean, we mentioned some big bats behind him. Billy Burns getting on pretty well ahead of him. And, I mean, he's got a solid matchup against Kyle Gibson, who's the ultimate contact pitcher. So he's going to be able to put the ball in play. And, I mean, yes, there's other cheap options, but I don't mind paying for him at 2,900. He's still really cheap.
Yeah, I think he's a steady option. The strategy is going to be fill out your lineup, get who you like, and then see what you have left over for shortstop, really. So, I mean, if he fits, yeah, that's a nice steady option. Otherwise, looking down, taking a glance at Johnny Peralta for 2.7K. I know he has, not so great of a matchup against John Lester, but it's lefty-righty. He's been hitting the ball lately, so I really don't mind that for the price point, low opportunity cost. Otherwise, a guy I've been going to surprisingly more often than not is Simmons of Atlanta. He's in the 2-hole. He's been hitting the ball. He's been getting multiple hits, multiple runs a lot of games. Hitting in front of Freddie Freeman, so you have to like that lineup security. And he has a good matchup against Jerome Williams, so 2.6K, I really don't mind that if that's what you have left over to click in for your shortstop.
Yeah, that's a great call, and I'll go to a guy that I've been going to a lot that's cheap. Is Marwin Gonzalez. Been batting 6th for the Astros. We know they've been scoring a lot of runs. Switch hitter, so if he's hitting lefty today against Colby Lewis, feeds into that a little bit, 2,300. He's not a guy with a ton of power or anything, but I mean, he does have hits in each of his last 5 games and 6 of his last 7. So, I mean, he's a guy that gets on base. And, I mean, we know they're scoring runs. So he's got an opportunity to drive in some runs. Got opportunity to get on base, get driven in. So at 2,300, he's near minimum salary. I don't mind him at all.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, moving on to the outfield. Nelson Cruz is against a lefty today. Here's your daily warning of Nelson Cruz versus a lefty. Get yourself some Nelson Cruz. I mean, I'm not saying he's a must in cash games or a must at all necessarily, but you must get some exposure to Nelson Cruz today against a lefty.
Yeah, definitely try your best to blend him in, and if you can't make it work for cash games, okay, then go ahead and steer down. But definitely make note of that and try your best to work him in. Otherwise, looking down the list, Chris Young against Mark Gurley. We have him at 2.8K. He'll likely be hitting second. Is that right? Does he hit second against lefties?
He should be.
Yeah, so gotta love that jump in the order, and he's a platoon specialist who pretty much only comes in against lefties, and he's got home run upside in a hitter-friendly park, so really like that. Otherwise, maybe Colby Rasmus for a tournament, 3K. I mean, we talked about Lewis against a lefty. Rasmus, he's just a power hitter. He's not going to give you much contact, so make note of that for tournaments. Otherwise, who are you looking at for outfield?
If you're going cheap, Ryan Rayburn always in play against the lefty. He's $2,500. Was a disappointment yesterday, but still, I mean, he's not a guy that's, he's not going to get you 2-3 hits every time. But going against a solid lefty, I guess, in Danny Duffy, but he should be batting right around 5th. I don't know. Francona's been batting him 6th behind Brandon Moss for some reason.
He was cleanup last night.
Yeah, that's right. He was cleanup last night. So
against the lefty.
I didn't know why Brandon Moss was hitting ahead of him against lefties. That baffles me, but different story, different time. There's plenty of those if you want to hear me complain about all those. But
maybe if it was Joey Votto against the lefty, that would be a lefty-lefty matchup I could sign off.
Joey Votto, I'll play him at any spot against the lefty.
Yeah.
No doubt. I really like Jacoby Ellsbury right now. He's on fire going up against Mark Burley. He's pretty much a lock when he gets on base to steal. Been scoring a lot of runs. I mean, he's got massive upside, great floor. I like playing him in cash games so you can afford him. Michael Brantley's got big upside. He's on fire right now. I know it's lefty-lefty, but he hits lefties pretty well. And also got to consider Josh Reddick if you're paying him. I mean, the guy went over 4 last night, but if you look at his 10 games before that, the guy, I mean, quietly, no one's talking about this guy, but he's destroying the ball. And you got to throw Jock Peterson in there as well. Didn't hit a home run last night, which was a big disappointment, but he did walk twice, which is encouraging, and still has home runs in 5 of his last 8 games there.
Yeah, the thing I don't like about Jock Peterson is that it's home run or nothing, pretty much for him. Has been the theme. I like the Josh Reddick call. He's been a tournament play that I've kept in the back of my mind this whole time because even if he's on a hot streak, he's not a sexy name that people are going to automatically click into their lineup as if, if Nelson Cruz had a hot streak like that. I mean, he'd be like 80% owned in cash games at that price point. But no, it's Josh Reddick, and people don't know his name. Otherwise, looking down the list here, you have Burns. I really like him. Speaking of Oakland bats, he's batting leadoff. Always a candidate for multiple hits, especially against Kyle Gibson, who doesn't really give up the deep ball, but he pitches to contact, as you said. So I like him in this spot, and he stole a base last night. So that's promising to bump up his fantasy production if he can get on base again.
Yeah, and another guy that I really like to play as well that always seems to fly under the radar is Alex Gordon. He's sitting at $3,100. The guy's been hitting the ball really well. One of, seemingly 9 guys for the Royals to get on base and score runs. He's got some power. He's got he's patient at the plate. He walks. He scores runs. I mean, $3,100 I think is just way too cheap for a price tag for a guy with his skills. And he's been batting leadoff too.
Yeah, he's batting leadoff with Escobar out, so you have to like that. He was like 6th before then, which I don't know why you have one of your best hitters batting 6th.
I saw him 7th a couple times this year.
I've never understood Ned Yost, but whatever. That's a story for a different day.
Yeah, we got a lot of stories for another day, so find us on that day, and we'll give you all the stories.
Let's just have a podcast special, stories for another day, and that day is today.
We'll post one of those up on like a Sunday or something where there's not much content. That'll be fun.
One more guy. As if we didn't give you enough, but Melky Cabrera, I have him written down, 2.5K. A lot more talented than that price level suggests, so don't mind him. Alfredo Simon, he's been good this year, but he has a strong susceptibility against lefties per his career, so maybe this is the time regression comes, and Melky Cabrera in the 2-hole for the White Sox.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that call as well, and that's going to wrap things up for us. Follow us on Twitter at DFCafe. As always, great content for tonight. Slate at dailyfantasycafe.com. Come see us again tomorrow.